If there's any questions for the material that we presented before our break. Does anyone have any questions? I'll leave some time at the end of this morning as well. So if there's any questions that come up, please make a note. And we'll try to end before 12:15. And we can answer some questions if needed. No questions? Okay. So let us continue this discussion around PLM. And we're spending that much time on it. I mean, PLM, as I said, it's a very big topic. Some data in our PLM certificate program, we actually have I think it's 25 classes. Each class is 4 hours long. So we're only looking at a little bit, but hopefully giving you enough of a foundation to ask more questions. And to specifically ask questions about your own business and what you should do with PLM. So let me now go into the discussion around how do you build a business case for PLM? What are some of the details around the benefits? I showed this slide before, and I think it's a very good summary slide of a life cycle approach and the different times where benefits can come in if you take a holistic approach to PLM. Right? You can deliver it earlier to market, you can do it at less cost, you can beat your competitors to the market, hopefully then have a larger margin, be more profitable, be smarter about how you support that product in the market itself, and be more efficient and effective throughout the life cycle. So that's at a very high level, the type of benefits that PLM can typically provide. So now I'll go into some more details, because the way we look at benefits, there's three very important factors. In order to get the most out of any kind of change to a business, you always have to look at three factors: people, processes, and technology. Okay? If you change one of them, you have to look at the other two. And usually you have to change all three in some respects to gain the most effectiveness or get the most benefit from PLM. So people, processes, and technologies. So if you change the technology but don't train the people, you probably won't use it right. If you try to do an old process and a new technology, you're probably wasting money. So all three are important, and all three go together. It's not that one is done without the other or before the other either. Usually all three have to be done together in an iterative fashion that allows for people to gain the most benefit from what you're trying to change. So again, aspects of change: people, processes, and technologies. So we're going to look at benefits in these 5 areas. There is some overlap, but these are the 5 major, let's say, general metric areas that we track. One is around business performance and opportunities, benefits related to the organization, benefits for the users, benefits for the product or service, and your service. And the last one, benefits related to process performance. We're going to look at benefit areas in each of these topical areas or categories. So first thing about PLM. If you have a single source of the truth, and you're managing clear, concise, and valid information, and people know where it is, generally you're going to be impacting the cost of the organization, lowering costs of the organization, cost of execution, cost of development, cost of introduction. You're streamlining processes. Generally speaking, most of the cost of a product is defined during R&D, because you're defining what the ingredients are. You're defining who you're buying it from, for the most part. You're defining the packaging. Packaging is defining what kind of equipment you need to have in order to package it. The formulas define what kind of equipment needs to create those formulas, and the recipes do as well. So R&D is really defining the vast majority of your life cycle costs. And PLM starts up front, portfolio management, requirements management, and R&D, to really get that cost under control. And most people say that about 80% of your cost of your product for its life cycle is defined in R&D. So if you get that right, that's when you can actually maximize your benefit long term. Companies historically thought that people were their biggest cost. It's generally not that. The biggest cost is their inefficiency and how they utilize all their resources, not just their people. Their facilities, their purchasing power, their people, and others. So looking at this, what are some of the business opportunities it provides? If you can streamline your business and gain more effectiveness or efficiency in people, the people can be doing more things. They can be more innovative. By the way, I think there's two major points to innovation. You have to have valid information, and you have to have time. If people don't have time, they can't innovate. They're duplicating the problems of the past. They're trying to find information that already exists. They're wasting time, basically. So you need to give them valid information and give them time to innovate. And some of the opportunities, as I mentioned here, more profit, more margin, more sales, and those are the typical things that you're going to see actually utilizing PLM to its fullest. Better business or higher quality products. So there's a whole set of things that result from doing things right the first time. Many companies put in processes to minimize risk. They put in lots of processes because they have a lot of risk. If they only did it right the first time, that risk would go down. PLM is trying to drive a certain level of discipline and repeatability so that you drive down risk action and you become more efficient as a result of that. So enabling innovation. So I talked about this. Core of PLM is process and product innovation. Being able to drive the business in a repeatable manner, which is appropriate, and drive them with clear, concise, and valid information so they make better decisions. And think about this. If you have to make a decision, a product decision, and you don't know where the information is, what do? You wait. You ask other people. It's inefficient. You go search for it. It's inefficient. All these things are inefficiencies we build into organizations. But if you knew where the information was, and when you found it, first of all, it was findable, and when you found it very quickly, you knew it was true, it was valid. So you're less likely to wait to make decisions, and you're most likely to make better decisions. Because companies don't make good decisions on bad data, and they don't make good decisions on data they can't find. So that's why that data is so important to the business itself. So being able to enable innovation, predictability. That I know what's going to happen, I know what's going to be done, I know what's next in the process. But also at the same time, flexibility, company flexibility. The company said, well, how do I have predictability and flexibility? Because you're executing within a framework of things that have to be repeatable, but those that don't have to be repeatable, you have flexibility. So providing, I like to say, the framework for execution, which is very structured, but within that you have flexibility for people to be innovative. And then last one, better management. Better management of processes, better management of product information, better management of processes, again, allow for repeatability and more efficiency in the organization. And we've seen this for years, that companies that understand PLM will be successful. Those that don't do PLM will learn from those companies that are successful and realize that they have something missing. And ultimately, we see this, and we've seen this in some companies, especially in early adopters. So I very early mentioned that early adoption around PLM back in the 1980s, actually, commercial PLM specifically, was around the discrete manufacturing world, especially aerospace and defense and automotive. What we've seen in recent years is a separation of companies that are followers and those that are leaders with PLM. The aerospace and defense companies that are leading with PLM are actually much more successful than those that follow. And we're seeing this starting to happen in other industries like food and beverage. And food and beverage is a newer adopter, maybe 10, 15 years, not 20, 30, or 40 years. But we expect that same separation. Companies that understand PLM and that execute it well will be much more successful. And there will be separation from those that don't really understand it. So that's really critical. I think there's an opportunity for companies that really want to be innovative to take PLM and really take it to heart and actually do something very valuable. So enabling quality assurance. Right? I first of all have to define what do I do and be able to validate that I did what I said I was going to do. And I have traceability. I have requirements management. I I have other aspects of quality. It's not just quality assurance as far as checking at the end, but it's actually quality steps throughout the process. Making sure that my specifications are up to date, that my regulations are related to those things, associated with those things that can be impacted by it. And if I have a change to regulation, I know I know all the different products that get impacted by it. I know which, let's say, a claim was changed. And I can no longer say, and I mentioned this before, low fat. What are all my products that actually are labeled low fat? And I can look at that within seconds. That allows me to have higher quality. The odds of me not being able to make the changes in time to support the regulations and to have that right quality are very small. But if it's a manual task, there's a lot of digging that has to be done to understand, well, this claim, where it is, in what region. That can take a lot of time, and usually something is forgotten. Then there's a quality issue. Because quality includes labeling. If the label is wrong, you have bad quality. You have bad ingredients, you have bad quality. So if they don't meet the specifications, are the specifications now, are they up to date? Again, if I can manage that, I'm going to have better quality in the long term. I have to have a foundation of information that I can manage, and then quality will definitely follow. Usually the impact on quality can be dramatic. Quality is a little harder to measure than, let's say, time to find information, but actually its impact on the business is much greater. Because think of the opposite. If I have bad quality and there's a recall, let's say there's found to be contamination, like lead contamination in my product, because of machinery or some other issue that happened, some contamination got in, that's huge. It can be detrimental to your business, not just because of the recall costs, but because of the bad publicity that it provides you. So at least the quality becomes a very important issue. And then there's also the quality processes that PLM can help execute. Speeding the business. So I mentioned this a couple of times around getting to market sooner. First to market with a new product generally can sell it at a premium, but then has to be responsive, because in any kind of curve, there's always going to be a down curve in costs, or what people are willing to pay for, especially if a new product comes on the market and that competitor undercuts you. And what you have to do, either you're going to eat away at your margins, or you have to become more efficient so that you can retain your margins. And what this is trying to show here is that PLM can help you actually continue to become more efficient in your execution as you even go through the product lifecycle, which actually can help you maintain your margins and sometimes even increase your margins. But a lot of companies have really struggled with that, and they generally just take away their margins. So in the beginning, maybe they have 5 or 10 or 20% margins. Maybe after the product has been in the market for 2 years or something, they have 1% margin. It's no longer efficient to be able to do that. You just can't afford to do that because wages are going up at the same time. There's other changes. The regulations are becoming more complex. So you have to look to become more efficient as well as being more responsive to the market. So benefits to business performance. So again, execution of the business, especially in the food and beverage, has a lot to do with requirements. All forms of requirements, right? We've talked about regulatory requirements, which are key. There's lots of different forms of it. And when you get into packaging, there's some interesting things going on around, I don't know if you've heard the circular economy, but how do I develop packaging which is totally biodegradable, for example, or that is totally recyclable at a reasonable cost? The cost, not minimum cost to you, but also minimum cost to the environment. What is really recyclable or reusable? There's lots of debates about, do I deliver something in glass, and then I just clean the glass, and I rebottle the glass? Well, cleaning the glass may be actually more costly for the environment and more costly than actually just recycling the glass. So you have to look at other aspects of that material to see what's actually most valuable to you or more efficient to you, but also best for the environment. So balancing sustainability, especially when you're dealing with packaging, becomes more critical. And how do I minimize what's thrown away? That's really what most people are talking about. So that's core to some of the major regulations that are going on. So I like this quote here. It's an anonymous person, but it says, to the optimist, the glass is half full. To the pessimist, the glass is half empty. To the engineer, the glass is twice as big as it needs to be. What that means is as developers and researchers and And engineers, we like to over-engineer. We like to make it more complex than it really needs to be. And what we need to understand is, like for, again, I'll use packaging as an example. What does it have to be? What is its life cycle? Does this life cycle live on after the product is used? Does that container get used for some other purpose? Does it get recycled in the same form, cleaned and reused? Or does it get shredded and used in some other purpose? So I have to think about the life cycle of that packaging. What's throwaway? What's not throwaway? What's reusable? What's remanufacturable? So I have to understand those concepts as well. I don't want to over-engineer it, but I want to engineer it for the life cycle. So understanding the life cycle becomes very important. And what I mean by that is understanding the life cycle of that packaging and what you're responsible for. And we're seeing this more and more regulations, is that more of the packaging has to be not just fully recyclable, but reusable and minimized. Because you want to minimize that packaging as well. Packaging itself, people generally don't really buy. They want the content. So you don't want to have it over-packaged, but you also want to be able to ship it in a way that it doesn't get destroyed or crushed. So there's always a balance. So some benefits for the organization. So people have a common repository, right? A single source of the truth. They know the processes they fit in. They understand who's doing what to what information. There's a way of commonly communicating. A common setting, common nomenclature, common, let's say, taxonomy or language, basically, product language that is, that people can use. It facilitates communication. It allows for better collaboration as well. It generally can support organizational change also, because you have a way to enable it in the organization, a way to maybe enforce those processes or those standards into the organization. And you become more repeatable, which usually means you're more efficient as well. So allowing people to have better access to specifications, to previous designs, the formulas, the ingredients, the suppliers that are approved, those types of things. This study by Arthur D. Little talks about what we do in product development. Is we end up redoing a lot of stuff often. We love to reinvent. That's not innovative. Innovation is applying something maybe that we designed before, but in a new, innovative way, or designing something that is new and innovative. There's other ways around it. I give you an example. I'm not sure if it will be understood totally here, but baking soda. Baking soda is something you use and put in baking products. But what was realized was also a good deodorizer. So instead of just selling it for baking soda, people actually just buy the boxes, put it in their refrigerators, and open it up, and it absorbs odors in the refrigerator. That was an innovative marketing. Marketing didn't change the product or the packaging of the product, but marketed for a new use. Created a huge market for it. So not only all the bakers want it, but everyone that has a refrigerator wants it. So increase the market size dynamically. And often innovation happens in the food and beverage industry and the CPG industry through market innovation. The application of something that already exists but in a new way, a new packaging, a new way of delivering. So those are some interesting things. If you go back in history, even about products like Coca-Cola, where it was originally sold by a chemist as a thing to cure all ills. It was basically sold as a way to fix any kind of sickness you have. If you want to have cocaine, it did something, make you feel better, certainly. I'm not sure if it really cured any illnesses or not. But, again, these things evolve over time. It's quite interesting. So reusing information and understanding it, but then using it in a new way. Not just duplicating the past, but actually utilizing it in the future. So avoiding, if you can reuse information, again, you understand it better, you know it's been tested already, you understand the quality it's at, again, it's more valuable to you. That's where you can usually be more innovative, because you're not duplicating the past, but you're utilizing something from the past to make another step, maybe hopefully a leap forward in innovation. Some other ones for the organization. Enabling data and management-intensive processes. There's a lot of manual activities to manage information. Now, as individuals, we create something, we have it on our hard disk, maybe we give it to someone else, maybe we put it on a shared drive. But if we're really going to manage the effectiveness of it. When is it effective? When can I use it? Who else can have visibility to it? They become very manually intensive processes. We want to remove them. We want PLM really to do that for us. We want to automate those repetitive processes in a way that we guarantee the information I'm looking at is valid. And again, it's clear, concise, and valid. So kind of removing those tasks, those manual administrative tasks, and allowing them to be automated. Helping integrate applications. So we talked about PLM and enabling innovation. So one of the key things was creating and capturing that intellectual assets. And the capturing part, you need to minimize reentry of information. Reentry of information generally causes errors to come into the process. So that's where a certain level of integration is appropriate. So integration to tools that are creating information and tools that need that information. So you can hopefully have a link between creation tools all the way through all the data management tools, all the way into the using tools. And minimizing the need to make changes or do any kind of manual intervention as possible. And then providing better data access and security. Again, if you can have a solution, a PLM solution or system support this, it can support then security rules. Who can see what, when? What stage is it in the life cycle? If something's very early, let's say it's an R&D, very early in R&D, it may be secret. I mean, you may have a defined thing that's secret, and you want very limited access to that information. And then maybe you want to actually segregate that information in a way that people outside that R&D only know that it's part A and part B. And then in the recipe, I combine two parts of part A and put one part of part B, and that's all I tell people. So I can manage different levels of granularity of information and do that in an automated way, removing the need for individuals to make decisions. It's done for them. It's part of the way that you implement, part of the data model that you've defined for your product. And it becomes less of a manual task and more of an automated task. So what about some benefits for the user? So ultimately, if you don't empower individuals who actually work within the system, they're going to fight it all the time. So you need to empower users as well. So providing them the data that they need to make decisions. Most people in organizations use information, product information, either create it and or use it. Actually, most of them use it and create it. They want to have access to that information that they need. And they want to feel comfortable that it's accurate as well. They want to be comfortable that if I look at it, if I find that information, I know I can use it to make my decisions on it. So giving them that access to consistent information that is clear, concise, and valid is kind of a core benefit to them. Providing shared access to data, linking data. So, okay, I want to use this specification. Is it released to be used? What manufacturers or what suppliers actually have been validated against that ingredient specification? What products already are using that ingredient specification? What are the quality coming from the inbound ingredients that are against that specification? So having all these links, as a let's say someone at R&D, I can very rapidly understand, is that specification valid and should I look to use that in specification of that ingredient? But if I had to go track that down myself, I probably wouldn't do it. Usually what will happen, I create a new specification, or I just guess. Guessing generally is not a good thing. Usually there's error in that guess. So again, if it's linked together, I'm more efficient as an individual. I'm more productive. And the product is better too. And lower risks and increased quality. So everyone in the organization knows something about a product, but no one knows everything. This is from one of my colleagues. He does a lot of stuff around benefit analysis. So the idea is that you have to bring the people together. As an individual, you only know so much, and it's not everything. So if I knew all these other things that I have to, if I have a full understanding of the context by which I make a decision in, again, I will make better decisions. And I will become more effective to the business, the product becomes better as well. Empowering the workers. So empowerment has to do with giving them responsibility, but also giving them the tools needed to make decisions with that responsibility. So some companies give people tools, but no empowerment. Some people empower people, but don't give them the tools. Either one works. So individuals both need the tools which means the system, the process, the data, and they have to be empowered to go use it. So if you don't empower them, then it's just a waste of time, because they'll wait for someone else anyway. So they have to both be given the access to that right information and the right tools, and they have to be empowered to make decisions based on it. So it reduces the burden of administrative tasks. So from an individual, I mentioned already the corporate perspective, or an individual perspective, you can minimize some of those administrative tasks that they do. And a lot of this has to do with project managers. A good exercise for you to do in your own organization is go talk to your program managers, the people that are doing project programs or product programs, and ask them what percent of their day is spent asking people what they're doing. Usually it's a very high percent. Usually more than 50% of their time is asking people, what's the status of this drawing? What's the status of this specification? What's the status of negotiation with this supplier? It's usually asking people questions of stuff that if it was all within one system associated, they wouldn't have to ask. All they would have to do is go query the system and they would find out right away. It would take minutes instead of hours. So that's a lot of non-evaluated time that's spent trying to find out what's going on. That's not easily to happen unless you talk to people. But if you put that into the system and allow the system to manage that information and manage the association of that information, again, you can greatly improve the effectiveness of those program managers and others in the organization. I'll give you some other examples here that transferring information from one system to another. So often, I call this swivel chair. So someone sits here and they type into the PLM, or let's say Excel. People love using Excel, right? Excel is, by the way, Excel is the biggest PLM tool. It's not really a PLM tool. It's the biggest product development tool known to mankind. But it's not a PLM tool. It may be used within a PLM environment, but it by itself is not a good PLM tool. But a lot of people do specifications in it, a lot of do bills and materials, lots write formulas in it. But they'll create something in Excel, and then they swivel their chair, and they go into ERP and they retype it in. Besides the time it takes, usually most people will make an error on average every 7 keystrokes. So companies that have to put into place checkers and reviewers and quality assurance people to make sure that they didn't put errors in. And then people go slower, and there's again more non-value-added tasks. So if you automate those flow of information, that's a result. And then use this common terminology, as I kind of mentioned already, is a common way of communicating to product information to everyone that's in it, so that everyone understands it the same way. Again, if you're operating in the same set of information, with the same meaning, people are more productive. Some additional benefits for the users. Avoiding work on obsolete information. So what that means is what normally happens in companies is someone has a new idea, they start working on it, and they're pulling information from maybe a previous project that they did, and they formulate some new product, or they develop a new package. And then they find out that, guess what, that old specification is old and it's not valid anymore, or that regulations changed, or there was a change to that package and that package doesn't exist anymore. So they end up spending a lot of wasted time because they don't know what the current information set is. So you want to avoid that. You want to avoid working on old information. You want to reduce the opportunity of working on data that has been changed or maybe even is being changed. Again, in the PLM environment, you know that. You know what's under change control. You know who owns it, and you can very quickly understand the status of that information set. And then alleviate the overhead dealing with change. So some people call it engineering change, some call it just change, specification change, just a couple of phrases for this, but basically a change to information and understanding where it is it under change or not. So you always should know any piece of information, let's say an ingredient specification. You know what is the current release specification, and you should also know if that one's under change, or maybe it's being reviewed for change. So you know what can be used, and you know if it's under change as well. You want to take a look at that. So here's some of the efforts that we spend, which are wasted time. And all companies spend a significant amount of time of wasted time. So correcting errors, looking for things that are known to exist but you don't know where it is, finding out why things are late, finding out things where they are, who has it, checking suspect information. I'm not sure if this is correct or not. And I'm asking a bunch of people, is it correct? Rectifying or reworking information, products, and delivering the products to the market as they should be, and not wasting a bunch of time on things that really should be automated or things that should be done in a very pragmatic and repeatable manner. Some additional benefits for the product or service. Be able to respond quickly to customers. So one of it is being able to have this information really available to the consumer, like from a website, so they know that, let's say there's allergens. Right? Allergens is an important thing to track in food and beverage. And understand, especially allergens keep changing, or what ones have to be actually specified on the label. So people are often looking at, does this product have this certain allergen in it? And they want to know if it's up-to-date information. If it's not up-to-date information, they buy it and it has the allergen in it, and then they're sick because of it. It can be very costly. It could also cost someone their life. So having up-to-date information related to everything that you're supposed to disclose is very critical. Be able to respond to that very quickly as well. Again, I mentioned before, regulation changes. So let's say there's a new allergen that has to be specified. Is that a big, tedious manual process, or is it something that you can just run a report against and understand it very quickly? Facilitate rapid product improvements, early product development cycles, getting the product to the market in the best way possible and making changes on it in the most cost-effective manner. If a product has to be changed once it's introduced to the market, it's more costly than if it's changed during our early R&D phases. So that's why I said that with regulations and regulatory compliance, it's kind of a check towards the end of R&D. That's usually more costly than if it's part of R&D. And then reducing the severity of errors, especially when the regulatory errors, you want to reduce that to zero. You want to really strive to make sure that every single time you bring something for compliance check, it will be compliant. Again, that makes compliancy a core part of your execution of your development processes. Which also means requirements management becomes a core element as well. So facilitating longer production runs. So I mentioned earlier about first to market generally gains a bigger market share. But usually also means they generally have a longer market run, right? Because you build a loyal base of followers that want your product. And there's some examples out there in the food and beverage industry, especially the beverage industry, where there's been products in the market probably a lot longer than they should have been, but there was enough, let's say, loyal buyers that it was still worth running one production line that actually did that. And that production line was paid for many, many years ago, because you have long production rates. Plant downtime, cut plant downtime, because you're better managing the cutting of new products. And understanding the relationship between the product, the formula, the recipe, the packaging, and the production facilities themselves, because they go together. You can't run something across a line which has to be, let's say, halal, for example, or certain kind of, let's say, religious compliance, if the line isn't blessed for that religious compliance. And there's similar type of examples for certain regulations as well. So they actually go together. You cannot separate necessarily the production facilities and production lines from the recipe and the formula. Of course, there's also capability differences. Let's say you have to have certain batch sizes for a certain recipe. Well, that production line can't do that. Well, then you have to be able to scale it and be able to release it. Sometimes things don't scale as much as great as you would like it to be. So you have to take that into consideration also. And then facilitating handoff of product data. And that's handoff into the production facilities, so that they have the right set of information. They make sure that they can run their equipment appropriately. They know what dials to set. They know what settings. They know the batch sizes. They understand scaling of the batches appropriately. And that they can make sure that they produce exactly what's specified every day, every second of the day. So there's some interesting things in business process performance. And we talked about before, you're creating intellectual assets, and you're creating those and transforming them into deliverable assets. And there's three major kind of areas of PLM that's going to help you get this done more efficiently. First thing is, when you look at development, it's an iterative process, right? And over time, you want to, well, first of all, start with a lot of different ideas, and iterate through those ideas, and over time narrow that down to what you're going to produce to the market. But that in itself is great. When companies say, okay, well, we want to do this faster, so we're going to have less iterations. Not necessarily a good idea, actually. Usually iterations get a better product, generally gets the issues out of the product more quickly. So it's not about doing less. It's about doing more in less time. So what do you do for PLM? First of all, you want to have design variation, because you want to try different things. Some of R&D is experimental. Like formulation itself, part of it's science, part of it, even experimental science, not just science as in calculations. Right? Formulation, the test. Right? You still have testers and others that are, I don't know, the people that do testing, especially smelling and tasting, are pretty unique people that can tell the difference sometimes between one little change to the formula and another little change to the formula. That's the art side of it, and that takes iterations to actually go through. So you don't want to minimize the design variations. You do want to manage, obviously, the convergence, because ultimately you have to deliver something to the market. And then you want to collaborate, and that's where you really shrink it. So I still have to manage, and I want to have a high degree of design iterations. I don't want to reduce the number, maybe I even want to increase the number. I want to put that data and process under better control so that I can drive towards convergence. And I also want to go collaborate so I can do it more quickly. So the three aspects of design, managing the data processes, and collaboration really are core components of PLM and how it can help you actually get it to market. Not just the product to market, but a better product to market more quickly. So again, higher quality, lower cost. It's helping you do the 3 C's, right? Cost, quality, time to market. I'm talking about up front, but do that in a more innovative, collaborative manner, which actually doesn't give you the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% improvement. It'll give you the 10 or 15, 20% improvement. And we work with clients right now that are talking about those types of improvements. They say, we cannot exist if we can only find another 3 or 4 or 5%. We cannot squeeze our ingredient suppliers anymore than we already have. Maybe we can get another 2% every other year from now. But we need to have 20 or 30% improvement in our efficiency to be competitive or stay competitive. So they're looking at really innovating the way they work to be able to do that. So some additional things around the business process. So providing a formal mechanism to evaluate design, evaluate the processes by which you're developing the different specifications, and having that, again, a repeatable way that's published to all those that need to see. So I have a new concept, a new artwork, right? A new design for a packaging, primary packaging, for example. Or I have a new way of displaying my nutritional fact pattern. Is that compliant or not? So again, having information as a way you communicate with all those that can be impacted and they need to understand the impact, and streamlining that from a process perspective. Allowing many users to see complex information, but see that in a way that's more readily accessible to them. So let's say you're doing a 3D design of new packaging. Not everyone needs to have that 3D design package to see it. They can see that maybe it's a 3D PDF. They can rotate it, they can understand it, but they don't have to be computer-aided design experts to go do that. They can see a structure of specifications in a hierarchical structure that's laid out on the screen instead of trying to figure out how is this specification related to this specification related to this specification. They can see that in a structure that's put on the screen for them so they can understand those relationships very quickly. Supporting the review team during collective competencies, bringing together basically a whole set of people that become smarter than the individual. That's what you're trying to do, is bring people together with information. One of the, let's say, struggles that a lot of people have when they apply PLM or any technology is they expect people to go away, or at least they believe that. Somehow technology will replace people. It doesn't happen. People are the core of intellectual assets. And information doesn't become an asset, an intellectual asset, unless there's people involved. So as I mentioned earlier, people are at that core of creating and using those intellectual assets. So actually what you want to do is bring those people together with that information. So you bring people together with the information. That's what becomes more powerful, and that's why the process is executed. So making changes earlier in the process. So I've talked about this a couple of different ways, but as you go through development, the earlier you make a change, the less it's going to cost. If you make a change to, let's say, a recipe which impacts the equipment you can use, you have to buy more equipment or different equipment. That's very costly. But if you made the change much earlier, before you bought the equipment, obviously the change is not as costly to the organization. So trying to not minimize change, but minimize the cost, not minimize the number of changes, but minimizing the cost of change. Reducing the cost of managing and tracking changes, and those are the administrative tasks. Who has to sign for what kind of specification, did they sign or not, and managing that, having traceability or not. Establishing and maintaining procedures for the re-identification or identification of information. So every piece of information has to be identified by something that's unique. Being able to manage that, which is not a manual effort, becomes more efficient for the organization. And avoiding the cost of late changes, as I mentioned. In some businesses, that can be very, very sizable, especially if the change causes a recall. You may remember some years ago, Perrier had to do a huge recall in Europe. Cost them not only millions and millions of euros, but also cost them a lot of customers for a period of time. There was a lawsuit I think it was in India, where they sued Coca-Cola for lowering the water table. A little unfair, because people want to pump water no matter what. But there's a lot of issues that go on in this industry, which you have to have traceability for and understanding. Are you doing anything that, let's say, shouldn't be done, and that you can prove that you did what you're supposed to do, and that you weren't abusing the resources that are provided to you. Improving cross-functional integration and collaboration. This is part of bringing people together. Bringing the people that do the artwork together with the people doing the formula. Say, you have to make sure that this is specified, because the formula has this in it that has to be disclosed in this manner. And bringing the people together in marketing and how they're going to market that product to make sure that the artwork is appropriate for that. So there's multiple people that have to be brought together to actually get a product to market. And the information becomes that core way of communicating what that product is all about. Speed responses to emergencies. This is especially true if there's some kind of recall or some issue that you might have because of contamination. Encouraging and enabling continuous improvement of the product, the processes in this case we're talking about. If you don't have automated processes, then to be able to improve them are kind of difficult because you don't know what's really being executed. But then once you have some automated processes like workflows, you want to have process owners. Those process owners should have metrics, and they should be given the ability, but also the responsibility to make continuous improvement on those processes. And last one here, enable business transformation. So you're really trying to make that, I hate saying it, paradigm shift, but you're trying to make a step change in how you execute. Removing as much inefficiency as possible and driving towards executing those things that are very repeatable, very sound, that will be consistent, basically consistently develop the products as they should be. And then allow for that flexibility within that framework to be innovative. So one of the things that we say to people is that you have to also execute PLM. You need to understand what PLM means to you, but you also have to understand the value, what it can provide you. So we have what we call a PLM benefits appraisal methodology. And there's 7 steps to that methodology. This is what's listed here. First thing, as an organization, you need to know what PLM means to you. What is product lifecycle management, and how would that apply to your business? What is concept? What is R&D? What is requirements? What's portfolio management? What are these different things, and what's important, and what will provide benefits to you? So that is having to understand what the benefits are, or business needs are. So what are you trying to accomplish as a business? What are those needs? So we were working with a client that does coffee. And in the U.S., coffee is not under regulatory control. Now, if you add stuff to it, you put milk in it, for example, or dried milk, now it's under FDA. And then they were doing other beverages, so they're getting into more complex beverages that have more requirements, more regulations. So their business needs expanded significantly. One, they were just roasting coffee beans and creating coffee blends. So they were blending recipes, but almost no regulations. To things that they were doing additives and and doing other beverages which required a lot more regulatory compliance and regulatory management. So their business needs changed. As a result, PLM became different for them, a different set of requirements. So then you look at, well, what are the primary benefits? So if I do PLM from an end-to-end approach, holistic approaches I've been talking about, how will that impact your business? And how will that make you faster to market? Will that allow you to utilize less people for the same products? Will that allow you to enter new markets without adding a lot more people? What will that give you as a business? So when you do that, then say, okay, well, what's the scope of PLM? What data will I manage? Will I manage my portfolio, my projects, my specifications, my bills and materials? What will I manage? What users? And maybe over what time will I build that environment out? What solutions then? Based on my business needs, what solutions should I look at? What vendors should I talk to gain a better understanding? What should that implementation strategy be, or that roadmap be? And finally, what is the cost of doing that? And what are the resulting benefits of actually executing that roadmap? And then finally, going to management and being able to articulate to management, this is what PLM means to me, it means to our business, this is the cost of it, and here's the benefits for it. And this is how we get to those benefits. That's the roadmap. So here's some specific examples that we've been able to gather from different types of companies over quite a number of years. What kind of benefits did they actually achieve by implementing PLM? So time to manufacturing reduced up to 50% faster to manufacturing. Processes, the change process, 10 to 70% reduction in the cost and time it takes to execute the change process. Product development costs reduced from 25 to 40%. Time to find information reduced from 75 to 90%. Time to create a new item, a new formula, a new part, whatever it might be, 15 to 70% reduction. So you can see here even the small side is pretty significant. You're not talking about 1 or 2% improvements. You're talking about 10, 20, 30, or more percent improvements. Significant enhancements to business execution as a result. I had this one from Heinz as an example within the food and beverage industry. So they talk about the time to develop labels reduced from 45 days to 7 days due to earlier visibility of recipe information. They increased productivity while actually decreasing product costs, and they were able to track supplier certification, corrective action reports, plant locations, products and specifications instantaneously. They had it all within one solution, and that also improved their productivity as a business. So some simple examples. I think you'll be hearing some more about these a little later today. So this is, I was alluding to this a little bit earlier. This is the relationship between the integrity of your information. The integrity here is the accuracy and completeness of your information. So the first sub-goal, accuracy and completeness. So you want accurate information and you want it complete. So if you don't know everything, it's hard to make a decision. So you want to know it as much as you can and you want it to be accurate. Then there's the relationship between that and the effectiveness of the business. And if you look here, most companies we see are about 90%, their information set is about 90% accurate and complete. At that point, the company is only about 43% effective. It's because we put all these other processes in place to overcome the fact that 10% is not accurate or not complete, and we don't even know what is not complete or accurate. So that means every time we put additional signatures in place, we put wait times in place, we put a bunch of other inefficiencies in place to guard against the risk of making bad decisions. So I think if you think about your own organization, you'll say, well, I can't be that inefficient. Well, you're probably executing in a more efficient manner, but you're executing a bunch of things, a bunch of steps you don't need to actually execute. And that's actually not value added, which makes you efficient. So think about what do you do in your processes to overcome the fact that you don't know what's accurate and complete. That will start getting you to think about how you can really improve. That's where these companies get those 10, 15, 20, 30, 70% efficient gains in effectiveness in certain areas. Because they do away with those non-value-added tasks They do away with the wait times and other things that are put into place, or the 20 signatures or the 10 signatures that are needed, which technically after you get past about 2 signatures, the rest of the signatures are usually wasted because they just expect, well, the other person signed it, so I'll sign it if they signed it. There's not much value. So this is a very important picture. If anything, again, look at that improvement. You go from 90 to 95%. You've gone from about 43% to about 68%. It's a huge increase in effectiveness in the business by only having a 5% increase in your accuracy and completeness of the information. And I would argue without a PLM coach, you can't really do that. You're probably doing as much as you can already, given the tools and the processes you have. And in order to get to that next level, you have to look at different ways of enabling. So we're going to start wrapping up now. I've got some best practices I want to share with you. See if there's any questions at the end. But I want to say, how do you go about this now as a business? So I already mentioned about you have to do this from a business perspective. So your first step has to be, what is your strategy? What is your business strategy? Do you want to go into new markets? Do you want to acquire people? You know what? Do I want to have more products? What kind? Do I want to go to coffee and go into carbonated drinks? Do I want to go from dairy products to non-dairy products? And what is my business strategies and my product strategies? That really becomes important to understand the context by which PLM will be defined. So then I have to understand, what's my current situation? Can I achieve those business objectives given the tools, given the processes, given the people and the way they've trained? Can I do that today? Can I do that with the information I have today, the systems I have today? What about the external impact? What's happening in regulations? What are my competitors doing? Because those things together really drive what the vision of PLM is. So the vision of PLM has to exist within the context of your business and also in the context of the market, so internal and external. At that point, then you can go ahead and you define your vision. This is what my destination is. So good vision is a destination. And there's generally multiple ways to get to that destination. So now you have to figure out how. What are the technologies? What are the processes? What are the organizational changes I need to have in order to achieve that or get to that destination? Because ultimately, that's what you're trying to do. Is you're trying to improve your business processes in a way that is really becoming innovative and allow for the development of an environment which gives you that innovation. That overall, that's the approach that we recommend companies take. And you should have that traceability from what you do all the way back to the business objectives. That won't be every business objective you have. There'll be other ones that business has. If you're not enabling the business, then you probably don't know what PLM means to your business. So when you start with business planning, right, or a high-level program planning, okay, so figure out where I want to go. So what are the steps to get me there? I can go in many different ways. If I have to, I was talking to someone at break, if you want to go to Beijing, there's many ways you can get to Beijing, right? You can take a slow train overnight, a high-speed train during the day or overnight as well, but a bit faster. I can fly there. I can walk there. I can ride a bike. I can drive. Some of them I would never want to do, but there is many ways to get there. Now I can go one direction and keep going for a long time and get there. I could technically go south and get to Beijing, which is going to have to go all the way back around the other way, but I can technically do that. Again, it's waste, probably a waste, but it could be interesting. I heard this morning that the Chinese high-speed rail wants to build a rail through Russia all the way to Alaska. I'm not sure why anyone wants to go to Alaska, by the way. I don't want to go there, but it would be pretty interesting to see a high-speed railway. Go there, though. So we have to figure out what's the destination and what are the steps to take us there. And make sure that I understand that path. Basically, that path is efficient, and there will be steps. So who has to be a member of the team is important. What am I trying to accomplish? Who do I have to get involved? What's the stages that I go through? And then make sure that I'm managing. This is a process. It's a strategic process, so I have to manage the execution of this process. So planning is an important step. Then I have to develop my strategies. So maybe my strategy is to actually go high-speed rail, and there may be reasons or strategic reasons of why I want to do that. I want to encourage that use of high-speed rail. build out that rail network. And it also can be used for cargo, for example. And there's other reasons for it. So what are the strategies? And senior management needs to support that. Often PLM is about changing the business and how they work. So you need to get both the grassroots or the bottom level to agree, but you also got to get the top manager to agree as well. So what's the scope of the project? What data will be managed, what users, what locations, all those become important. To define that out in as much detail as possible. What's that vision? You define that destination. Gaining agreement from all the stakeholders. All the people that will be impacted by that PLM environment have to buy into it and accept the changes that are going to happen. And then pinpoint what constraints exist. Maybe there's something you can't change. And I've seen this in cases where maybe there's a union, for example, or there's a regulation or something that you can't change. So you have to develop or define the PLM program to support it. You can't fight it. You have to support it. So business requirements. This is another thing that a lot of companies struggle with is they have a lot of wants. I want this technology to be really neat. I want it to be colorful. I want. But that's not really a requirement. A requirement is I need. I need to have it do something in a certain way. I need to be able to manage specifications, which are data records. I need to be able to manage formulas and recipes and formula. And I have to be able to run formula optimizations on these type of ingredients. So these are very specific things that must be defined. That will, without doing it, you cannot be successful in PLM. So these are the true business requirements. So to define the process requirements that support the business, determine the solution requirements that will enable those processes and enable the business objectives, define an enterprise roadmap in now the next level of detail. So not only my destination, but what are the steps along the way? What stops will I take, or what steps will I take to get there? Establish then the real business requirements. That is, if I don't do it, I should not do PLM. So these are the must-haves. And then detail areas where savings will show up. So I have to go back to where's the value. So if I do this in this way, this is the value I will achieve. And have direct measurements of understanding that value. Because one thing that can happen is you may be going the right direction, but you don't make the right stops, you don't have the right benefits, it will be a failure. Management will second guess you, they'll delay the project or investing in the next step. So you have to understand where you're going to make sure that you continue to invest in the right direction. And a PLM environment that's not successful is one that's not achieving its benefits. And the earlier you understand it's not achieving its benefits, the more likely you can make the corrections so that you can get back on the right track. So what about finding the right solution? And this is a whole set. Some of these are very specific to food and beverage, a few of them are not. There's a lot of really good products, and you're going to hear from another gentleman from Celerant. It's one of the leading products actually in the food and beverage industry. I said before, we track about 700 products. Out of the 700 products, there's probably about 6 or so that I would say are core PLM for the food and beverage industry. And a number of them are on this sheet here. But there should be a way that you should go through a process to understand what kind of capability that you're looking for. We generally have 5 tools that we suggest people look at when they're trying to evaluate a solution set. First thing is you want to understand the cost and the capability. So request for a proposal can be used, that kind of mechanism to understand features and functions, and making sure that the product has the right kind of capabilities to support the business needs, business process needs you have. And then quotation is that you understand the costs, at least the costs going in. That's not all the costs, it's only part of the costs. We like to see benchmarks or some kind of proof of solution, some kind of prototypes maybe. Sometimes they're bought, sometimes they're done for free depending on what you're requiring. Usually if they're small projects, maybe one-day demonstration, and usually it's a demonstration, it's not a full, it's not like a pilot or anything, but sometimes pilots are good as well to evaluate. Those are usually something that you pay for. Provider profile. So I mentioned earlier that PLM evolves, it changes over time. As you're looking for upgrades, you're looking for additional capabilities. The vendors aren't standing still. You want a partner that you can be with for a long time. So you want to also evaluate the partner. What are their skill set? What kind of in-country support do they provide? What's their track record of providing capabilities and upgrades to their clients? There's no one platform that will never change. So you want a vendor that actually has platform strategies and that evolves them over time. And then whenever there's a major change, they actually work with their clients to move them to the next generation. You want a partner. And I tell clients quite a bit that you can get a cheap solution and waste your money totally. You can get an expensive solution and waste your money totally. Right? So it doesn't matter how much you spend, you can waste money. What you want to do is spend the right amount of money to get the right benefit. Sometimes that means you spend a little bit more. So I've seen companies spend, let's say, $500,000 and get $500,000 in benefits. That's not so good, actually. But if they spend $1 million, they would get $5 million in benefits. It starts getting better. So there's usually some kind of level of or threshold that if you don't pass that threshold, you haven't enabled enough, and you won't get the benefit. So you have to understand where that threshold is. So implementation planning. So I've defined the roadmap, I've defined the scope, the strategies, I've selected a solution. Now I work with that solution provider to get into the next level of detail around implementation planning. Again, I have to look at who my partners are, who's on the team, what are the expected benefits. Developing a pilot program is quite successful usually, is where you target a specific area and make sure it works there. If it works there, then you bring that out to the further parts of the organization. If you try to impact the whole organization at once, generally there's failure, not because of the technology, but because you just try to do too much too quickly. Measure the production pilot metrics. So you put the metrics in place, you validate that the pilot worked as it should have, and then you move on to the rest of the implementation. So reviewing the return on investment is something you do right up front. You continue to do that throughout implementation and throughout use of the solution itself. So make sure that those metrics are in place as you implement and that you're going down the right path. Work with a client where they had spent $10 million and they had received no benefits. And I asked them, I said, why did you spend $10 million? They said, well, we didn't know any better. We didn't have any metrics. That was their biggest mistake. They did not know what they wanted, they didn't know their destination, and they had no way to measure it. So I tell people all the time from a vision. If you don't have a vision, it's really scary. If you don't have a destination in mind, or let's say I tell you, get in your car, drive 100 kilometers and call me up, and I'll tell you if you're in the right place. You're probably never going to be in the right place. There's no vision, there's no shared vision. So you have to have that, and you have to be able to measure that you're achieving it. Customization. So in PLM terms, usually customization is something that you do to a product that every time you upgrade, you have to do it again, or you at least have to think about doing it again. We always say minimize that. Unless it provides you a competitive advantage, and you understand that as a total cost of ownership, don't customize, configure. And most of the solutions today are very configurable. You can change data models, you can extend data models, you can add workflows, you can do pretty much anything you really want to do. Customization can be kept at a minimum, and you really should be kept at a minimum. That usually requires some process change. Ensure that all issues are found during a production pilot are resolved before you go to roll out. If it's not resolved then, it will not be resolved when you roll it out. And always keep a backup solution. In case something happens, you may have to roll back to something else. And last one, maintain communication. People will want to know what's going on. So what about approaches? Some people say, well, I have to develop everything all at once. I do my 12 months of development and then I roll it all out and I have a big bang. I almost never see a PLM implementation successful when they do some kind of big bang. PLM and the PLM technologies generally are made so they can be implemented in phases or steps. It generally minimizes risk and makes a better product in the long run. Sometimes it may take a little bit longer to implement, but it's actually a much better product. So we generally suggest some kind of, as it says, progressive or staged implementation approach. But remember, though, there are some negatives there. People may think it takes too long, and they may not be fully behind it. So you have to plan it out and make sure people will stay the course, stay on that journey. So implementation balancing. It is about balancing. It's about balancing the need of the organization or how fast you get it there to the consensus. Because people generally like to do things the way they're comfortable doing it. But really to do PLM, you probably have to change the way they do, maybe sometimes a lot of the things they do, or at least how they do it. So you have to balance that and say, okay, how do I over time get people to change, to do things in a better way, a more